Hello, everyone, West Virginia Mountaineers, and we got a great show for you tonight. Football season, regular season is over, and another season notched in the books. West Virginia goes 8-4, and tonight we've got some good guests coming on, and we also going to invite you guys to come on the show with us. We're going to drop a link and let some people call into the show tonight. We want to discuss bowl game projections, where we think West Virginia could go. We're going to talk about Neal Brown being safe at West Virginia after going 8-4 this year, and we're just going to have a season recap, talk about some of the games, some of our favorite games, and stuff like that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. Well, once again, welcome into the voice of college football, West Virginia style, right here. Your home for college football, 24 hours a day, right here on the voice of college football. Pretty much. I mean, in this network, we are always live somewhere, whether it's here or the Michigan channel or the Big 12 channel or USC channel or the main channel. Be sure you sub every channel up on the voice of college football because you can get some good insight. Hey, got a great guest with us tonight. As always, good friend of mine, Mr. Frank Fear. How you doing tonight, Frank?
Always great to see you again, Joey. I'm doing just fine.
Good, good, good. We also have Greg. Greg was with us last week. He'll be coming back tonight. We hope, we think. He's not here yet, but he can show up anytime. So looking forward to having Greg. And like I said, we'll drop a link later on. Let you guys call in with us. I see Timothy Green out there in the chat. Hey, Timmy. And Timothy, I've still got your hat sitting here. I've still not got it in the military. I apologize for that. Um, just been really busy, as you can imagine, with it being Christmas time. But hey, season's over. 8-4, man. Back at the beginning of the season, Frank, West Virginia had the second toughest schedule in the nation, so they said. Had the toughest schedule in the Big 12, obviously. The season kicks off and it starts off with Penn State, and we knew Penn State was good, and Penn State took it to us, right? I mean, they beat us pretty soundly. There was no problem there, and everybody expected that to happen. What everybody didn't expect to happen was the weeks following that, when we go and beat Pitt and TCU and Texas Tech. I mean, and just get off to a nice little roll there of 4-1 to start the season, and and we haven't really looked back. I mean, we've had some losses, obviously to Oklahoma State and the Hail Mary to Houston, which really should have never happened. But but tell me what you thought, Frank, preseason when you seen that schedule and how tough that schedule looked preseason. What did you think was going to end up this year?
Well, I mean, the expectations were low. I remember probably around August, maybe July, looking at the strength of schedules for all the teams in Power Five. And wow, when you looked at what WVU opponents were ranked, you knew it was going to be a tall climb. Now, the Big 12 didn't turn out to be as strong as the preseason analysts thought, but still, I always take the position. I think it's a practical position. You play the teams that are on the schedule. You can't. That's just a given. The league makes the league roster, and then you have your out of conference teams, and you play the games. And West Virginia, I think, exceeded expectations. Not for all people. I mean, one of the things that's recurring, and I've said this before, Joey. We talked about this. I think it's troubling. The expectations, I think, of some fans, I'm not sure are anywhere near being realistic. What they want out of this team. But I look at it this way: if there's one thing I would say about this team, it got better and better and better as the season came on. And I thought Bob Herzl did a great job in one of his articles this week, because he said, and I think he's right, he said the offense was organized, structured around Garrett Green. all the chips were on the table with Green. And I looked at the national stats today, and Green's killing it. He's a national level player now. If you look at percentage of passes completed, yards rush, total yards, average yards per game, he's up there among the national leaders. So I think it's great. We're going to a bowl. We'll talk about that tonight. These are happy times. Happy
Yeah.
times, largely because of that last minute pass against Baylor. Heaven forbid if there hadn't been a comeback, but we'll talk about that too.
Now, finally, we got Chris, Greg. I'm looking at his last name. We got Greg Christ in the back room with us, and bring him in here real quick. Greg, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you again.
Apologize for being late, getting on. I had a little login trouble, but
Oh,
but I made it.
hey, that's not a problem. Just being here, that's what matters, right? And you're here. So, so Greg, let me go to you here for a second. Neal Brown, obviously safe after an 8-4 season. Some of the fan base is not happy about that. Some of the fan base was wishing him to lose to Cincinnati and wishing him to lose to Baylor, and because they wanted him fired. That's a sad day for the fan base, isn't it? I mean, it really is. That's a sad day for a fan base.
No, it's awful. It's pathetic. And I was listening to Frank talk here, about some of the things that's transpired. I was looking back earlier in the week at some things in this same discussion, and they were talking about the 2005 Mountaineer team that won the Sugar Bowl, and they showed their schedule and their record that year. They beat 3 teams with winning records. Syracuse was 0-10 that year. Rutgers was one of the teams that had a winning record, and Wofford was one of the teams that had a winning record. But yeah, you didn't hear this, this constant bantering about firing the coach. And I say this over and over and over again. People say this is not what we're used to. We're not used to being marginal. We're not used to being happy over an 8-4 season in a bowl game. And I'm looking back at our history and I'm thinking, that is what we're used to. And we should be thrilled with this. I mean, this team was picked to finish last in the Big 12. Most people were saying 3-4 wins max. And just like Frank said, this team got better and better and better and better. And, you can tell as a fan watching a game how you feel about your team. And this sounds kind of weird, but watching that game the other night, when we got the ball at the end of the game, I really felt like we were going to go down and score. I mean, I had no doubt we were going to go down and score just because the way we locked in and moved that ball the first half. I thought, even though we didn't do it in the second half, I still felt like we were going to go down there and score. I didn't know it was going to be quite the way it turned out to be, but I'm happy it was. But we should be thrilled with this team right now and what's going on up there. And I keep saying, and my brother and I had this conversation today, you think about what would we gain by firing Neal Brown right now? What would there be to gain? I mean, it would set the program back. Regardless of who you bring in, what are they going to do that's going to be any better than this? I just do not understand, that logic and that way of thinking. If you're a true fan, you get behind them. And, it's like I said last week, I'm not big anti Neal Brown, or I'm not a big, let's go Neal Brown. I'm not either one. I'm a Mountaineer fan, and I want whoever's there to succeed, and I want what's best for the program. And I think there is no question what is best for this program right now is to keep him in place and let him keep on doing what he's doing, because he's got it on the right trajectory.
I agree 100%. And, sometimes teams need luck, right? I mean, you look, like we talked about, you looked at this schedule preseason and you thought, man, this is going to be brutal. We got Texas Tech, who's favored to be one of the best players in the conference. Yep. TCU, who just came off a national championship game. Penn State, Pitt, who is 2 years removed from an ACC championship, and this schedule just looked brutal. And as it turns out, Penn State is a good team, probably the best team on our schedule. Without a doubt, maybe Oklahoma. I guess you could say Oklahoma, but bottom line, Penn State's a great team. Mm-hmm. And you looked on down there with Texas Tech. They're 6-6. They're going to go bowling, but they didn't turn out the team that we thought they would. TCU was just absolutely rock bottom, as was Baylor. The four newcomers were not much of a match at all to anybody in the Big 12. I realized that they won a few games in the Big 12. All of them won one or two games, but Houston had to beat us on a Hail Mary pass with 12 seconds to go that should have never happened. But yeah, I'm with you guys that West Virginia has there's a problem with the fan base of saying, "Hey, we went 8-4 and we suck." What are y'all talking
Yeah.
about? I mean,
Yeah.
we can't help who we played and how good those teams were. Bottom line is we took care of business and we went 8-4. Now we're going to go to a decent bowl game. We, may not be the college football playoffs like the fan base wants. But I'm talking about luck. If you look back in 1988, hey, Penn State was down in 1988, as
Yep.
was Pitt, as was Syracuse, as was Boston College, as was Virginia Tech.
Yep.
All those teams were down that year. We went undefeated. 2003, same way, we went undefeated. But guess what? Miami was down. Uh, uh, Pitt was down. Syracuse was down. Boston College was down. Those were good teams back then, but they had their down years, and they happened to have those down years when we had really good teams.
Yeah.
2007, you could argue just like you just did. Hey, we didn't have too many teams on that schedule that we beat that had winning records. I can remember, some of those games with Rutgers when Rutgers had Ray Rice. Man, they were a pretty good team, and we
Yep.
struggled beating those teams sometimes, but we did beat them. But yeah, you got to have some luck in college football. I don't care who you are or what team you are. There's got to be some luck. You agree with that, Frank?
Absolutely. At the same time, I think the beautiful thing about a democracy is that people have an opportunity to express their voice. And so, what surprises me is that so many are negative about the Mountaineers. I think there's another thing that's going on. Forget how people think. I think most people could agree with the fact that college football is changing. It has changed significantly. And I think what that means, the next part doesn't come automatically. We have to adjust our way of thinking accordingly. I'll give you an example. We all know this portal has caused, you want to call it havoc on the one hand, but at least, these players are free agents. So they get up and leave. We're already seeing starting college quarterbacks around the country before the bowl season declaring they're going into the portal.
Yep.
Mike Elko has said last week, the new coach at A&M, coach at Duke until a couple of days ago, said he believes this year is going to be Katie bar the door with the portal. And it's coming up in December. The portal opens for a couple of days in December, and then after in April, in the spring. What this means is teams and coaches and fans are going to have to expect a lot of the players, including their stars, and I would say especially their stars, are going to be courted by other teams or are going to be looking at other teams. What does that mean? It's always been important to bring in first-year players. Always important to bring in first-year players. Well, it's going to have to be even more important if you're losing your stars and losing players to other teams. There's no question. And Joey, you and I and Greg were looking at an article this week. I have the data here that I'll look up, and it was interesting. It was an article that was written by Chris Anderson in 24/7 Sports, and he actually broke down. He's very good. He actually broke down the percentage contribution of first-year WVU players to this team, and right down the line, 40% up to 60% of the performance, 43% of the rushing yards, 52% of the pass breakups, 55% of the receiving yards, 40% of the sacks, all were done by freshmen or first-year players.
Yep.
So the bottom line is, with the exodus, you've got to have an inflow of players. And one of the things, and Greg and I have talked about this so much, what I don't live in West Virginia, but my heart's there. It is fantastic, irrespective of what Dana said. You can't recruit West Virginia. for Power 5 players. Look at all those Power 5 players that West Virginia recruited, and they came in and made a dent. Clement, 80 yards last week. He made those 2 big catches on that last drive, guys. And you can go down the list.
Yeah.
Martin, we talked about this. And so you want to see that because you're going to have to ride incoming players to replace those who are going to be leaving through the portal.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be so important, and I think that's something that Neal Brown has gotten better at. I think he understands it better now, and he's using it a lot better. We're going to lose players in that portal, but we're going to lose them, and I think he has figured out and learned what to bring in, how to bring in. I think he even talked about it, how he was able to, look at it from a little different perspective, figure out what kind of players we needed, who we needed where, and that sort of thing. So I think he's improved in that regard. And, it's not always going to come down to, well, we don't have the money. Well, I think you got to find that type of player, like I said, and get them in here. The money thing, I don't know what you do about that. I mean, we're not going to be able to compete with that no matter what, And you think, for example, Raheem White's going to be getting some telephone calls? I guarantee you, So, instead of bemoaning this, because it's going to happen. I mean, we're going to lose players, and we're going to lose good players. We have to depend on our coaching staff to figure out how and what to bring in from that portal rather than everything going out. We've got to figure out how to get them to come in as well.
But on a bright note, we've all learned here in the last couple of weeks that Zach Frazier was offered a lot of money to leave and go to, was it Alabama or Georgia? I can't remember which one it was, but he was offered a lot of money to leave West Virginia and come there. And he stayed, he stayed in Morgantown and, easily could have taken that money and went down there. But, I think that the players that I worry about losing right now is, number one, C.J. Donaldson, because for some reason Jaheim White is really good. Just a freshman coming in. C.J. is obviously young himself, but he's not getting the majority of touches like he did last year. Now he's sharing them with Jaheim White. Jaheim White has pretty much became the starter, and doing a really good job. So I worry about that, but I also worry about Nico Marchio because one thing that made us so good this year was having a great backup quarterback like Nico to be able to turn to. So when Garrett Green was hurt during the TCU and Texas Tech games, we just turned to Nico and said, next man up, let's go get him. And Nico went out there and did it. So I worry that Nico could hit the transfer portal as well. Those are the two players I'm got the most concern with, but I'm hoping that the NIL will take care of those guys and keep them right there in Morgantown.
Well, I think if you remember last year, I think Donaldson, I believe, entered last year, didn't come back out, decided to stay, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if both of them don't go. And when you think about it, when you think about Nico's a little feedback here, but Nico's situation, he knows he's going to have to sit again next year. If he can go somewhere and play and get paid, it's just hard to get upset with those kids for that. I mean, if that were my son and he got an offer from, somewhere to go and make a couple $100,000 a year, I'd be like, let's pack our bags and move on. I don't bemoan him a bit.
Yeah. If you
shout out to Vince.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. Frank, big shout out to Vincent Pink for being in the chat with us. He says, "Go Pokes." Hey, a lot of luck. I would love nothing more than Oklahoma State to win that game, to beat Texas. And
me too.
I know that might sound bad because it's more money for West Virginia if we can make the playoffs in the Big 12. Texas makes the playoffs. It's more money for every team in the Big 12. But at the same time, man, I just don't want Texas or Oklahoma to have a shot at that national championship in their last year here. So go Pope. I'm with you, Vincent.
I am too. All the way.
I'm sorry, Frank. Go ahead, buddy.
No. I'm glad you said hello to Vincent. And I saw that Shane talked about the Neal. And by the way, for those of you who want to follow the Neal, there's a great site Some of you know it. It's called on3.com. And you can go there and see what the nil values are estimated for players, including the WVU players. Some of those valuations will blow you away. Milam, for example, his nil value is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
But, related to that, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, Jaheim White was not a heavily recruited player. He was a 3-star out of York, Pennsylvania. And one of the things that Brown was criticized over, I don't see evidence. Some people say I don't see evidence of him being able to staff to be able to coach up their players. Well, you got to do two things. First of all, you got to get the good ones to come, and then you've got to make sure they keep on developing and have an opportunity to shine. And I think the freshmen have done that. Look at Cutter on defense.
Yeah.
Came in and had to replace a great defensive player, and he's done well. He led last week in terms of number of tackles against Baylor. But the issue of the nil is, I agree with Shane. Congress needs to do something. The big question, I'd say it's the $1 million question, will they? Every time there is a move where senators and representatives start talking and draft ideas, larger national, international issues come in, and then you hear nothing for a period of time. Joe Manchin with Tommy Tuberville had a proposal. Then Tuberville, of course, got into that big fight with the military in terms of holding up, the naming of incoming military people. And then, of course, Joe announced his retirement from the Senate. So I think it's going to come down to someone, I've said this before on the show, Cory Booker, who played at Stanford. Someone's going to have to grab this and bring it across the goal line. Thus far, it hasn't happened, even with the NCAA bringing in a new president that really has been lobbying Washington to do this. And so I think that's why Elko said what he said. He doesn't see it happening soon, and this is going to be the real Wild West, his prediction, this offseason.
Yeah.
I see Shane here saying, what did we watch? And Shane says, Brown reserves credit. I think he means deserves credit. He has a great eye for talent, and he does. He does have. One thing, and Greg, I'm going to ask you this, and then I want you to carry on with whatever you want to say too. One thing that Rich Rodriguez learned at West Virginia, Bill Stewart learned it as well. I think Dana Holgerson had figured it out for the most part on his own too, and Neal Brown now has realized it is you have to recruit a different type of player to West Virginia. They have to be blue collar, they have to be hardworking, they have to, that, but also they need to have a different kind of a skill set, right? We need those speed guys around the edge. We need that mobile quarterback. That's when West Virginia is successful. If we look back on it, we can go all the way back to Major Harris. Heck, you can go all the way back to Jeff Hostetler, Oliver Luck, those guys. The reason we were successful is because those guys could move a little bit in the pocket and they were really accurate passers. But then we get to Major Harris, who is a scrambling quarterback and a great thrower. And you go on up to 93s. Darren Studstill and Jake the Snake Kelchner, both of them were excellent running quarterbacks and had great option games. Up through Pat White and Rich Rodriguez, what do we have? An option game and a great scrambling quarterback who could run and outrun everybody. And, I think we go up to there, Geno Smith. Even though he was a great passer and that was what he was really good at it, Geno could scramble too. Geno could get out of trouble. He could run a first down, and he had such long legs and long strides. His speed was deceptive. So those are the type of players you have to get to West Virginia. I think Neal Brown's realized that, and he's recruiting a lot of those players, and it looks good. Do you think so too, Greg? I mean, I think the future's really bright for West Virginia right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I think when he first got here, I think that's probably, and I've never obviously asked him this, but I bet if you had him in a room by yourself and you asked him this, he would say yes, for sure. I think when he first got here, I don't think he realized the talent level, the difference in talent from where he came from to where he was at this time at West Virginia. And I think it took him a year or two, to start focusing in on that higher level player. And once he did that, he started getting them in here. I mean, like you said, you look at that freshman class. I think I read 15, 17 of them contributed, and then Frank read all the percentages of how much contributions there were for those guys. I think he really upped his level of recruiting. I think he upped his game right there, and I think you can see that now.
Along those lines, I was going to say, just to put more meat on the bones, Beanie Bishop. A number of the viewers and you guys certainly know. I'm a Big Ten guy too because I worked at Michigan State for so many years. I never heard that name at Minnesota. And he comes to West Virginia. This guy is, last week at least, I haven't looked at the data, was leading the country in terms of passes defended. He didn't have last week was not one of his best games, but he was leading the country going into the Baylor game. And who heard of Michael Hayes at Georgia State as a place kicker, replacing a really competent guy in leg? He comes in, he's 83%. And, we needed those 2 field goals the other night. And so he has, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to be a drone, but when Mark D'Antonio left Cincinnati to come to Michigan State, I said, wait a minute now. He was defensive coordinator at at Ohio State when they won the national championship. But it was his first rodeo as a head coach. What I learned about Mark D'Antonio and Neal Brown reminds me so much is this eye for talent. I mean, Kirk Cousins was a 3-star. And Le'Veon Bell was a 2-star. And within a matter of a couple of years, those guys were stars, not only at the collegiate level, but they went on to be stars in the NFL. And he's doing the same thing. Jaheim White, my God. I looked at the list of schools that recruited him, and it was a short list. And so you got to give him a lot of credit. And again, going back to the topic we started with, it's mystifying to me why we can't not only talk about this, but why more people aren't talking about the fact that the climb has been maybe slower than we would have wanted, but there's clear evidence, not opinions, clear evidence backed by statistics that he's recruited good kids. They're performing in the field. And look at the numbers that Greg just said in terms of the number of incoming people, not only freshmen, but also portal like a Beanie Bishop and a Hayes. And they're performing. They're coming in and they're performing.
So I'm going to bring this comment up right here because this kind of makes my point. Tim Green says Skylar Howard had a 10-win season under Dana. Exactly. And remember what kind of quarterback he was. He was a blue-collar quarterback. Man, he wasn't afraid to take a hit. He got in there. He dished hits out. You always knew if we was going to win a game because you could tell if Skylar Howard was in the zone, right? I mean, he would get back there and he would drop back to pass and everybody be covered and he would take off running and there wasn't no slide in Skylar Howard. He very seldom slid. He would just run you over, run into you, take a hard hit, bounce back up. It always scared me. He was a lot like Tavon Austin always scared me too because Tavon would take a hard hit and bounce right back up and be all excited and run back into the huddle, and that's exactly how Skylar Howard was too. So,
and remember how much hell Skylar Howard caught from our fans, if you remember, looking back on that. All kinds of grief. People just dogged him about, oh, he's terrible, blah, 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 on. Well, yeah, he was part of a 10-win season. He couldn't have been that bad.
Our fan base, man, is funny. It's weird. They support 100%, right? They all support Mountaineers, and I know they all want the program to be a winning program, and they stand behind them, win or lose, in a sense. Not some of them. Some of them, they start losing, they disappear, and and they're the bandwagon fans, right? They come and jump on the bandwagon when it's doing good, but at the same time, our fan base is very loyal, and the largest fan base in the Big 12 after Oklahoma and Texas are gone. We are the largest fan base in the Big 12, and rightfully so, because we've been there several times to where we've had these teams that had there been playoffs, back in the early 2000s, even some in the 1990s. There have been playoffs. West Virginia would have been in those playoffs many, many, many times, all through the years. So we look back on it and think, hey, we were the Georgia not Georgia, but some of these teams of the past, we were the Ohio States that could make a playoff and couldn't win the thing of the past or something, or Michigan. Well, we weren't, but that's how the fan base looks at us is we need to have 10 win seasons every year or the fan base isn't happy. And that's just not logical. It's not feasible. This is Western University. This isn't Alabama. This isn't Georgia. This isn't LSU. This is West Virginia. And yes, we can build some great teams and we can beat all those teams. But you got to give it some time. I'm like you guys. I just really believe Dana Holgerson didn't know how to recruit a Power Five to West Virginia from Troy, right? He leaves Troy. He's used to recruiting all these group of five players there, and he can get some good group of fives and grab some out of the transfer portal and build him a good team at Troy. He come to West Virginia, and I think his first couple of years he tried to do the same thing at West Virginia. He looked at 2-star recruits, two and low 3-star recruits, not realizing, hey, I can get 4-star and then maybe even 5-star here and there to West Virginia. I don't think he realized that. I think it took him some time. And finally, he starts recruiting the Rodney Gallaghers, right? And the Nico Marchios and things like that. He started recruiting those guys, and we got the 4-star talent. And I think it woke Neal Brown up to say, okay, we can recruit at West Virginia. Dana Holgerson was wrong. Maybe I can't get 15 4-star players, but I can grab my fair share of 3 or 4 of them at any given time. So I'm really happy for Neal Brown. I do want to drop the link real quick, and if anybody out there would like to come in and ask a question, we're gonna move this on and go on to some bowl projections. But I do want to invite everybody in. If you come in, you might be in the back of StreamYard for just a minute before I bring you in. And I will only bring in one at a time so we don't talk over top of each other. Let you ask your question and talk for a little bit, and then we'll move on if we have somebody else in the back room wanting to come in. Anyway, I apologize.
I was going to say, I see Dave Gorby is there.
Yep.
So he's got to get in line, or he's going to catch hell, isn't he, Greg?
That's right. He goes to the back of the line.
I said the front of the line.
Joey, he's my co-host on my show. You probably haven't seen him.
Which one is it?
Yeah, David Gorby. Yeah.
Yeah, he made a comment there. Benny did in the regular season as leader in forced incompletion. Benny Bishop.
There you go.
I'm like you, Frank. I didn't know who he was. Now, when he committed to West Virginia, I started hearing some great things about him, but I still didn't know who he was and whether or not, he would fit into the program. And the only thing I kept thinking about was, okay, this was not a player that a lot of teams wanted. He might have been in the transfer portal, but there was nobody really going after him. Nobody was looking at him and going after him really hard. And West Virginia goes and grabs him. And I was thinking then, are we sure we want that player? Nobody else wanted him. Are we seeing, is Neal Brown seeing something nobody else is? Obviously he was. So it goes back to the comment we had a while ago. Neal Brown starting to get a vision there and see what's going on. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about Neal Brown or about the Neal Brown being safe. Let's talk about future expectations. Neal Brown might be off the hot seat, but that hot seat's still a little bit warm, right? Going into next year, unfortunately, and I hate that for Neal Brown. Yeah. I really do. I want him to be safe and build a good program here. But he's going to have a warm seat going in, if not with the administration, definitely with the fans. And they're going to want to see this team that he's got right now be able to win 9, 10, or 11 games next year. So let's see future expectations. Frank, what do you think? What do you think Neal Brown has to do next year to stay off of that hot seat?
Well, the one thing, obviously, is to continue what he's doing, and that is to coach, really have an eye for talent, which he does, his staff does, bring in good guys, players, and coach them up. He's got to continue doing that. The one thing that obviously is going to be, again, different because we've got 4 more teams coming into the conference again, and they're not Power Five teams. Excuse me, group of five teams making the transfer. These are Power Five teams from the Pac-12, and so we play Arizona next year. Is it Arizona? Yeah. And one of the things I looked at in the 24 schedule is that a number of the good teams that we know will be good, teams like Iowa State and Kansas State, et cetera, we're playing them at home next year, and we have 7 home games. Yeah. So I think that helps. 7 home games with Kansas State, Iowa State, and I believe Arizona at home, I think is going to help. But you got Penn State there coming in to open the season. You got Pitt up there. SUNY Albany is coming in, which would be equivalent to Duquesne. And there's no question, Shane's right. Another solid recruiting year, 8-9 win season. I think it's possible. I think the schedule will help. The other thing I would say, just going back to the last topic, what I've done, and I would encourage everyone to do this. There are a lot of people who obviously are very negative about WVU fans. They're negative, and Brown specifically. And what I do is I just bring out the stats. Don't counter opinions with opinions. Counter opinions with information that can't be contradicted. So, Dave Gorby just said, because I said I didn't know whether Beanie Bishop finished the last week the way he was the week before. And he basically, David said he looked at the data, and Beanie Bishop is finished number 1 in pass defense of all players nationally. Now, that's a specific fact. Other specific facts. Green, everybody thought Green was going to be a backup. That was his role. He was recruited to be a backup. Garrett Green is in the top 15 nationally in yards per carry. That includes running backs. The number 1 in the country is 8.4. He's 6.38. He's in the top 25 in pass completion yards per attempt, and he's top 25 in terms of points responsible for season-wide. And he's in the top 40 in terms of total offense that he's brought in per game. That's Garrett. That's just one player that everyone thought was just a backup. And so let's just counter with facts.
Yep. Yeah, and and Shane's right there. I saw he said 8 or 9 wins. I think he has to do at least as well as we did this year. But I would like to say this: I just would be curious for every one of these people that are saying, well, look at the schedule. That's why he won all those games. And shout out, by the way, to my good buddy Todd Withrow. I see he's watching. If we went 6-6, and you looked at our schedule, and 10 of those 12 teams had winning records, would people say, well, we won 6 games, that's good because all these teams have winning records? That's a rhetorical question. No, they would not. They would not say that. And so, yeah, I think
Greg,
if you see
Greg,
improvement.
just 1 second, Greg. I'm sorry. Yeah. I've got somebody at my door. I've got somebody knocking on my door.
Okay.
So I will be right back. You guys keep talking. I apologize.
That's all right. Yeah, go ahead. I feel he's playing with my animals and everything else. And I didn't have a lot of problem logging in, Frank. I actually got locked out. My brother and his wife met for dinner. And I said, I got to go. I got to do my show. So I rushed over here to go in. The door was locked. I don't have a key.
Oh, no.
So I got in here about 5 minutes till 7. I'm trying to get everything hooked
That's
up.
all right. Better late than never. That's
logging in on a different computer. But anyway, I think if they, I don't know that it necessarily means, if they go 8-4 again next year, if that's the same as going 8-4 this year, yeah, is it? Maybe if we go 7-5, that's better than what we did this year. If you look at the team and who we play and all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I don't think people will look at it like that. I don't think people will say, well, our schedule was, twice as tough, so we should have probably less wins, but still be improving, if that makes sense. I don't know if that
it does make sense. And the thing about it is, let's be honest, and we know this to be true, the Big 12 was a tougher conference last year. I mean, TCU, Kansas State won the conference, and then TCU won the regular season. TCU went to the college football playoff. And I looked at the ESPN Football Power Index data. 2023 compared to 2022, and I just assumed that our power index for this year, because we won all these games, would be much better than last year. And guess what? It was about the same.
Same. Yeah.
Last year was a losing season. This year we're going to a bowl, but because the Big 12 was tougher last year from top to bottom, our football power index last year and this year really wasn't that far apart. So, you know, so I mean, again, looking at the data gives you some things to look at and to think about. But the bottom line is, has there been progress? I would argue that's an important outcome question, and I think we all agree there has been progress.
Yep.
And you can see it. That 2-minute drill. That's not the first time that Garrett Green did that, and that's not the first time those receivers stepped up. They stepped up in the Houston game too and went down the field and scored what should have been the winning touchdown. So I mean, a lot to be thankful for, and I wouldn't put it out of the question leading up to that opening game against Penn State. You know, I presented data earlier this year on the Wolf Show that Penn State has a history of being wobbly early, and going back to being beaten at home by teams like Ohio. And so, so anyway, I don't know what Shane means there, 41 or 46. I wonder Shane, what do you mean by that?
I'm not sure what you mean.
You want to talk about expectations and outcomes and all that. What do you think, Franklin at Penn State, you know, what are they saying about him and to him? You know, he has shown over the years, can't win that big game. This year, they were supposed to have the best team they've had in decades, and they've lost 2 games and are really, you know, I'm not sure how, you know, they're not nearly as good, I think, as the national media portrays them to be. But if, you know, if those expectations are here for Neal Brown, what would it be like if, you know, if he was at Penn State, or if you dealt with that at Penn State? That's, you know, really below expectations, I think, what they're saying anyway.
Yeah. You're back, Joey.
Yeah, I do want to point out real quick.
Hopefully,
David Stage quarterback went into the portal. I've seen that, David. Yeah, what's Will Howard? Is that his name? Will Howard, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, went into the transfer portal, and I did not expect that out of him because he was he's pretty solid as in the lead there as a starting quarterback, and you know, and was had a great season up until he got hurt. Come back, had a decent season in the second half. He's going to make a great quarterback for somebody. I don't know where he's planning on going. All right, so we have a lot of people in the chat asking us as well. So what bowl game are we going to? So I'm going to read some of these bowl game projections to you guys that I've got pulled up here. Athlon Sport projects AutoZone Liberty Bowl versus Memphis. CBS Sports, AutoZone Liberty Bowl versus SMU. College Football Network, AutoZone Liberty Bowl versus Virginia Tech. Lockheed Martin, College Football News says Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl versus SMU. ESPN, AutoZone Liberty Bowl versus App State. That'd be an interesting game. Mountaineers versus the Mountaineers.
Yeah.
ESPN Guaranteed Rate Bowl versus Northwestern. Fox Sports Texas Bowl versus Texas A&M. And we played Texas A&M, what was that, 2015 in the Alamo Bowl, wasn't it? Was that the Alamo Bowl in 2015 when we played Texas A&M, or 2014? And we lost right at the end of the game. It was a good game all the way through.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of projections for the Pop-Tart Bowl, which used to be, oh my goodness, what bowl was the Pop-Tart Bowl before? Blue Bonnet Bowl.
Cheetah, wasn't that the
Cheetah?
Yeah.
And the thing about it is if we can get into that bowl, the Pop-Tart Bowl, that could be a nice matchup against a Notre Dame team or a Clemson team or a Texas A&M team. That would be a nice bowl matchup. But if none of those are going to happen, I really like the AutoZone Liberty Bowl versus App State. I just think Mountaineers versus Mountaineers. Now, App State's probably one of the better group of 5 teams, and I'm really not looking forward to playing them. But I do think it'll be an interesting matchup. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, let's talk about. So I know Frank, I know you went in depth with this stuff and looked at it. Where do you? And you probably looked at some money on it too. So tell me,
Yeah.
where do you think West Virginia lands?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did it after I got into an exchange the other night on Facebook, unexpected. When a fan was talking about, sort of like this is really a free agency thing that you got bowls out there and they can pick any teams. Well, let's walk this back. It's an industry, folks. We know that, and it's all about money, as all industries are. The NCAA guarantees that every team that is not in the college playoff, but is in a non-college football playoff bowl, is going to get $4 million. So we already know that we're not going to have. See Dave Gorby there this year, but it may well be. I'll get to that. We already know there will not be a Big 12 team in the college football playoff. That's probably about 95% accurate. Texas might make it if they win, but even if they win, I just don't see it. So let's assume that Texas is not going to make the college football playoff. Well, then they get the prize, and this year will be the next best prize. Typically, it would be the Sugar Bowl, but the Sugar Bowl is in the college football playoff this year. So the Sugar Bowl's off the table for the Big 12 champion. They're going to go to the Cotton. The champion will go to the Cotton, Fiesta, or Peach Bowl. If it's Texas, it's probably going to be the Cotton Bowl. But so then you've got 8 other teams, 9 teams in the Big 12 qualified. A lot of teams in other conferences got wiped out, particularly in the Big 10 that last weekend when Nebraska lost, Illinois lost, etc. So we've got 9 bowl tie-ins. One is already taken, with the champion going to probably the Cotton Bowl or the Fiesta or the Peach. And then when it goes by, and you're right, I looked this up and I didn't know this. The differential in terms of the money that is guaranteed by these bowls, these 8 other bowls that the Big 12 has tie-ins, is not equal. The Alamo Bowl has a payout of $8,300,000. The First Responders Bowl has a payout of $825,000. So this is the way it's going to go. The Big 12 is going to try to optimize, and what's going to happen is you look at that order of finish, and you're just going to go down the pecking order. Number 1 is the Alamo Bowl. Number 2 is the Pop-Tarts Bowl, all by payout. The Texas Bowl, they pay $6 million. The Liberty Bowl is 4th. They pay $4.7 million. Then the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, then the Responders Bowl, all the way down to the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. I'm thinking that West Virginia probably has the best chance of landing because we're in the middle of the pack of the bowl qualifiers, in the middle of the pack of those bowls. The Liberty Bowl would be what I would consider the best of that breed. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl, the best of the breed, I think, second. And then the First Responders Bowl. That means, because of the tie-ins, if I'm right, Liberty Bowl has a tie-in with the SEC. Okay? The Guaranteed Rate Bowl has a tie-in with the Big 10. And the First Responders Bowl has a priority for the ACC. If not, then the American, and if not, Conference USA. So I think there are about, I'd say, 15 teams that I think West Virginia may end up with. And these conferences are going to be like sumo wrestlers. We're trying to get their teams in the best possible bowl. And I think West Virginia, because we were tied for 4th, is going to end up in the 4th, 5th, or 6th rank. And I've talked with a lot of people, and the one that seems to have the most preference for the WV fans I've talked with, and I'll stop with this, is the Liberty Bowl. A lot of people like the Liberty Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, and I think a lot of people have probably done what you've done, Frank, and broken it down, looked at what we're going to have to pick from, and the Liberty Bowl seems to be the one. that most people were leaning towards. I know even when you look at the national publications, most of them are saying the Liberty Bowl. And I'm like Joey, I'd like to see us play somebody maybe different that we haven't played in a while. I don't know if I would want it to be Appalachian State or not, because they have a tendency to knock off these higher up, these Power 5 teams, and so I don't know about that. I think it would be cool, but yeah, I'd like to see them play somebody, somebody a little different, maybe a Kentucky or someone like that that we don't play all the time, or at least don't have much of a history with. I think we played them once in it may have been the Liberty Bowl. I think that's when Hostetler played, maybe. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to see them play someone like that. But I'm like you. I think more than likely it's going to be the Liberty Bowl. That seems to be the popular choice right now.
Well, I look back over the years. I probably won more money on Appalachian State than any other team in the country, because when they're playing an LSU or an Arkansas or somebody like that, I just pick Appalachian State to cover, and they're going to cover. Yeah. Most likely going to win.
Yeah.
I picked them. Was it last year they played Arkansas, and Arkansas had a winning record. They were doing good, and they was going to that game, and I was like, man, Appalachian State's going to beat them. I'm just going to bet Appalachian State. And I did. I bet Appalachian State and won that game. Appalachian State, I've won more on Appalachian State than I have West Virginia over the past several years. Appalachian State's always been good to me. So, sorry, Frank, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, you did the right thing. Well, look at last year. Tulane came back and beat USC. How many people took Tulane in that game? I'll just close with this, and that is, if you continue my logic, which may make sense or may not make, that we're, because we finished in the middle of the bowl qualifiers in the Big 12, and we've got tie-ins, the Big 12 has tie-ins, then to match that up would be to look at these other conferences and which teams are in the middle of those conferences, right? Because that would be likely the marriage. And here they are. In the SEC, the middle teams of the bowl qualifiers are Kentucky, going back to what Greg said, Texas A&M, and Auburn. And of those, Auburn would be the weakest team. I mean, they were beaten by a great New Mexico State team. Jerry Kill's done a great job at Auburn, and Texas A&M. New Mexico State beat them like 20 points. Yeah. And then in the Big Ten, the middle of the pack would be Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern. What a story there. Team that went 1-11 last year. The one game they won, Northwestern, was a season opener. They lost all the rest. They got into a scandal. Their head coach was fired. They brought in a guy from North Dakota State, and he's now the permanent coach, record of 75. So Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Rutgers would not be a good look. I hope that doesn't happen. And in the First Responders Bowl, is the ACC, a truckload of middle qualifiers there. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech would be attractive. They really bounced back after losing to Marshall. Duke, Miami, Boston College, and Syracuse. So those are the Power 5 teams, again, with the logic, middle of the pack bowl, 4th, 5th, or 6th of the 9 tie-ins. West Virginia being a middle of the conference qualifier against middle of the conference qualifier either in the Big Ten, the SEC, or the ACC based on the bowl. But in the end, it's going to be politics. And so I'm trying to enforce logic. Let's just see how it shakes out. We'll know in a couple of days.
Yeah.
So for everybody in the chat, I do want to bring something up for you guys. A lot of this stuff's going to change, but here you see that we have West Virginia football at the Voice of College Football merchandise. If you go to topqualityshirts.com, that's a network that of YouTube people that I put together, and there's actually going to be some more added on here in the next couple of weeks. We have Voice of College Football, Exploring with Ben and Sam, Pigskin Pete, Traveling Fools, Eat 'em Dogs, Tie Guy Trivia. But like I said, we have a couple more that will be coming in with us here in the next week or two. But you can get your good merchandise. I mean, we don't sell junk. This is not the Teespring junk that most YouTubers sell. We sell quality merchandise, nothing but quality merchandise.
True.
This is merchandise that's going to last you for a long time. So you can go over there, and shipping is included in the price you see. So you don't have to worry about shipping at all. It's not going to add any more money onto you. Well, then you got to worry about the taxes. Taxes are going to get you. Uncle Sam's got to have their cut, and there ain't nothing we can do about that. But yeah, we'd appreciate it if anybody go over there and check out our merchandise store. You can go over to topqualityshirts.com, click on the Voice of College Football, and then under that you'll have many different team channels. You can choose West Virginia and get yourself some West Virginia football at the Voice of College Football merchandise. So we've got about 5 minutes left here, and there's one thing that I wanted to um, bring in for a season recap that we didn't do. I want to know from you guys, which game do you feel like we played best in this year? And I'm going to tell you what my pick is, and then I'll let you guys talk from there. Um, the best game that I think we played this year was BYU, mainly just because we drug them up and down the field, and there was absolutely nothing they could do. And it seemed like we couldn't do anything wrong. Everything we did was right. But we also did that same thing pretty much against Cincinnati, but it wasn't quite the extent it was against BYU. But we also played very well, I think, against Penn State. But Penn State is really a good team. Maybe they might be third in the Big Ten after losing to Ohio State and Michigan. But guess what? Penn State could beat 99% of the teams out there in the country. I'm going to tell you right now, Penn State's a really good team. So we played well against them, but no game that I don't think we played any game better than we did the Baylor game. I wanted to get your guys' thought on that. Which game did you enjoy watching more this year because of the dominance of West Virginia?
Yeah, I thought
Or
I
just
thought
how
I thought the BYU game by far was our best game. The BYU game and the first half of the Baylor game, with the exception of special teams. I thought we played the first half of the Baylor game was unbelievable. I mean, we just went up and down the field just like that. And so I thought we did now in BYU. We did it the whole game. We completed that whole game like that. So I think that was probably the best, best overall performance. And like I said, the Baylor first half, take away the 2 kick returns, that game would have been a blowout, I think.
it would have, and I'm like you. My demeanor changed the first time they ran a kickback. The very first time they ran a kickback, I thought, "What are we doing? We're gonna dominate this game and fall apart on special teams."
Yeah.
And them kicked off to them again. We go down and score and answer that, kick off to them again, and they do the exact same thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, kick the ball out of bounds. Quit
Yeah.
kicking it. Kick it out
Give
of
it
bounds. 35.
I told my son and I were watching this down in Kingsport, and I told him I coached middle school football for 10 or 12 years. And a buddy of mine, I graduated high school, he coached another team here in Fayette County, and he would onside kick every single time. And I'm like, why do you do that? And he's like, well, my kickoff team's so bad, I know if I kick it off, they're going to run it all the way back for a touchdown. If I onside kick it, at least I got a chance to recover. I said, well, that's pretty good thinking. That's pretty good logic.
I like that.
I was there going, just kick it out of bounds. Frank,
Yeah.
what was your favorite game to watch this year? What the team that we performed best against?
Well, I think you guys nailed it in terms of the against both of those teams. First half of the Baylor game and BYU. I mean, WVU was dominant, but the two games I enjoyed the most, and I think they were turning points for the season, or I think maybe were precursors of things to come. When Garrett went down against Pitt, Nico had to come in, and I agree with Shane. It was the Pitt game, because if Nico hadn't performed and we had lost that game, I don't think we'd be talking about a team that's 8-4. And the other one was the TCU game, because we played them when we didn't know that TCU would not be bowl eligible. If anyone said at the beginning of the season TCU is going to be bowl ineligible, we would have said, what are you drinking? What are you smoking? And the thing, and I've mentioned this on the show, the thing that struck me, we had 2 players go out in that game, one for the season. And WVU came out after those injuries stronger and with more resolve, and won that game on the road by blocking those 2 field goals at the end of the game. And so to me, those 2 games and how WV responded showed me that this team has something. And luckily, they won games after that. And yet, Oklahoma State, in the fourth quarter, the flip side of the coin, Oklahoma, flip side of the coin, not good at all, more reminiscent of last year's Mountaineers. But we are where we are, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, I'm like you guys. Now that the first half of the Baylor game, though, it was kind of amazing how much we dominated that game, and if it wasn't for them 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, that score would have been a heck of a lot different. Yeah. But I just think back and think of past teams and how good we've done. If you think about 2018, and I know a lot of people can't remember the 2018 season, but we lost to Iowa State on the road in Ames, Iowa, in a terrible fashion. I mean, they just totally dominated. We were 5-0, right? I think we were 5-0 going into that game, and Iowa State just absolutely dominated us from start to finish. The next week, we came back against Baylor and absolutely blew Baylor out of the water. Beat worst that we've ever beat Baylor that following week. And I remember oh my goodness, what's his name? The coach for them at the time, Rhodes. No, not Rhodes. Oh my goodness,
Rule.
I can't remember. Matt Rule. Yeah, Matt Rule. So he said, that was a totally dominant game. If we just could not keep up with West Virginia. They dominated us in all aspects of the game, and I think it was the worst game that Baylor played all year long that year. So it just happens that teams play bad things. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming out with us tonight. Frank, do you have anything else you'd like to add tonight? And you too, Greg, I want you guys to open up and let me know if there's anything else you want to talk about tonight. Or Frank, go ahead. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Tomorrow night is my show, Courtside with Coach Chris show. And thanks to Frank, I'll be having a former defensive coordinator for WVU, Dennis Brown, will be my guest tomorrow night. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku starting at 7:30. So all you got to do is just search Courtside with Coach Chris. Check it out. And Muggy will be there.
And you got the other channel too on New River Network.
Yeah, the New River Network is what my show is on. Yeah, New River Network.
Okay. Yeah, so the search for the New River Network, sub that channel up. I mean, I go over there and been watching some of his shows and things, and he has a great interview with Frank Fear from a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now.
Yep.
And it was a great interview. So go over there and catch him shows. And I still love your weatherman. You got that weatherman on there. What's their names again?
Muggy McLeod and Misty Rains.
Muggy McLeod and Misty Rains. Great weather names and everything. You got your helicopter, your eye in the sky.
That's right. Yep.
Frank, how you doing, buddy? Tell me anything else you want to talk about tonight, Frank?
Well, I always enjoy being with you guys, and I really do appreciate all the fans who watch live, archive. We got to find a way to get them more involved in the program. Drop them in because you guys are great. And I'll tell you, this is the thing that I really am thankful for. I've had an opportunity to get to know a number of these viewers and have exchanges with them. And they've stimulated me, pointed and direct me in the direction of, you might want to read this, you might want to look at this, you may want to think about this. And it's really been great. And I also want to say, and I think a number of you know this, Joey and I have talked about this. One of our regulars, Kelly McCord, has been in the hospital. He was in the ICU for a long time, I think a week or so. And we just learned today he's out, he's doing better, he's home. So I don't think he's watching this week. I don't think he's up to it, but our prayers are with Kelly McCourt, and we hope he'll be with us next Wednesday night.
Very much so. Prayers with him. Well, Frank, Greg, thank you guys for joining us. But there's one more thing with everybody in the chat. So Frank and Greg, and I'm going to let you guys talk about this for a second. are going to start their own show up right here on the Voice of College Football West Virginia channel. Um, the three of us are going to meet with Mark tomorrow, and I'm excited about this. We've had some great people over on this channel through the years and stuff. But Wolfman done a show on our channel for quite a while, done a great job for us, and unfortunately, his untimely passing. Um, and I really hate that. I miss that guy so much. I miss calling him up and just talking about a football game with that man. But really excited that we're going to have Frank and Greg coming on doing a show with us. I don't even know if they've decided what their show's going to be about yet, but they may not even want me promoting this right now. But come next week, I believe you guys are going to have a show together. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys are going to have a show together here come next week. Am I right?
Yeah, we already picked a title. It's going to be called the Greg Fear Show. Isn't that we? we don't even know. Yeah. So we'll take it step by step, but always enjoy the opportunity to be with you guys and with the fans out there, and it's become an important part of my life. And I agree with you, and we all do. Greg certainly would agree. We miss Wolf, and it's just it's still surreal to think he's not with us anymore.
Yep. Still doesn't seem real. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it with Frank as well. Always love talking to Frank, and he'll tell you he's been on my show a few times. I've interviewed him on my show, and always enjoy having him on. Great insights. But yeah, we'll put our heads together and come up with something. Hopefully, it's worth watching.
I know it will be. I enjoyed Wolfman, and one thing that I wanted to do on this channel was have a nice memorial service for him. Everybody come in and talk about what he meant to them. Have former football players, coaches, staff, everything. And I think most of my wife had a heart attack, and we had to put all that on hold. And the timing just hasn't been right to do that. But it might be something we need to think about doing, just to have a nice little memorial service right here on this channel for Dale Wolfley, because he was a great friend, an awesome guy, and I miss him. I miss him dearly, and I'm sure Frank does, and Greg as well. So,
yep.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining in with us tonight out there in the chat. We appreciate everyone that tunes in, and I know some of you tune in and then go back out and then come back or whatever and watch 2 or 3 different shows at one time. I'm guilty of that myself, so I don't blame you. But we love you and glad you were here with us tonight. Frank, Greg, appreciate you. Looking forward to next week's show with you guys on it. Do y'all have a date, a day that y'all are going to do that on yet, or have y'all even decided that?
I don't think we've even got so far yet.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Just keep an eye on the Voice of College Football. Mark will be sure and put it in the community section. Let you guys know when that'll be. I will also put it in the community section. We'll put it out on Twitter. Frank will have it on his Twitter. I will. I'm sure Greg will. We'll have it on Facebook as well. Tune into the show, and we appreciate everybody being here. Y'all have a great night. We love you, and we will see you next week.